Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. What a weird damn game in Detroit on Sunday for the Lakers. They do win 121-116, but it's after LeBron James gets ejected. The Lakers fall behind big and outscore the Detroit by 20 in the fourth for a big comeback victory. There is much to discuss, and we will do that next on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day. We appreciate it. Monday through Friday, we get the thing up for you bright and early. So no matter where you are, it can be the first thing that you listen to every day. Try to make a Locked On podcast your second one. Locked On Bets, looking ahead, maybe Locked On Knicks to get ready for the next Lakers game. Andy, Luke Walton was fired on Sunday. It means firing season is officially upon us. I thought there was a chance Frank Vogel might join him before the fourth quarter of Sunday's game, but no, the Lakers outscored Detroit by 20. So we'll get into a little bit of the coaching carousel stuff as the show goes on. Okay. Should Lakers fans, Andy, feel worse about the fact that the Lakers needed a 20-point rally in the fourth quarter, outscoring Detroit by 20 to win this game on Sunday, or feel better about the fact that they got the rally and won? Because the only thing that sucks worse than that's worse than having to overcome that is actually losing to the Pistons. Like that would have been worse.
You just answered your own question.
Yeah, but
the answer is it's always better to have won. I mean, you have more problems if you end up losing that game. I think what you're actually asking is only half right. It's not whether you should feel better or worse about the two choices you gave. The answer is obviously you should feel better about the win. The real question is, how good do you feel? Mm-hmm. What degree of goodness do you allow yourself from this win? Because there's a lot of different stuff that came from it, and there's a lot of different narratives that, if nothing else, the players involved are, trying to, I guess, express that, this could be a rallying point for the season. The idea that their backs were against the wall in Detroit, against 4-12 Detroit without LeBron, and they ended up making up this deficit. However good you think is appropriate to feel about it, I think can be discussed. But ultimately, you should feel more good than bad because they won and they needed this win. They're now at 9-9. They're coming off an awful loss Friday to the Boston Celtics. And that was actually coming off a good loss, a quality, respectable loss to the Milwaukee Bucks at full strength that you looked at and said, all right, you know what? I remember talking about this a lot right after the game. If the Lakers played like this on a regular basis, they're going to win some games on this road trip, regardless of who's available. They have since gone on, Brian, to play the majority of the ensuing 8 quarters not like they played against the Milwaukee Bucks.
All right.
And that's why you don't know how to feel about it.
If you missed the game, I'm sure you've seen the highlights.
First of all, if you missed it, go back and watch it. This
at the very least, go find the highlights on your preferred social media platform. LeBron James and Isaiah Stewart get locked up in the this is the third quarter, correct?
Yes.
In the third quarter of the game, on the free throw line, LeBron catches, no doubt about it, catches Isaiah Stewart with a pretty harsh elbow right at his eye. LeBron would be thrown out of the game for it appropriately. Isaiah Stewart went nuts. He had a big gash that opened up. It did require 5 stitches, and the game was knocked off kilter as Isaiah Stewart tried to kill LeBron or chase him around, and all of this. The Lakers at that point, and this is what guys are referring to as sort of this, like, it could go either way kind of deal, were faced coming back from to come back in this game without LeBron. And if they don't win, this goes down. If it's the only reason it wouldn't be the worst loss of the season because they've already lost to Oklahoma City. Like that's
Twice.
like twice. Like in any normal for any normal team, this would easily you walk into Detroit, who have a nice collection of young players, many of whom I would love to have on a team like the Lakers, and all. But right now they suck. Like they are one of the worst offensive teams. They were one of the worst defensive teams. The Lakers, Detroit, I think it scored 100 points like twice in their last 10 games or something. And the Lakers gave up 66 points to them at halftime. This would have, for a normal team, been one of the worst losses they could possibly have. Instead, they do come back. They run a ton of AD pick and roll in the fourth quarter. They rally and make up the deficit. Anthony Davis, in the last minute of the game, had two blocks, 4 points. It was just in the last 30 seconds was just unbelievable. Blockade Cunningham twice with a minute left in the game.
Westbrook took over big time in the fourth quarter. He had a terrific close.
So, all right, well, let's talk about this question that the players were bringing up. Is this a rallying point for this team? Is this the kind of thing that can turn a season for a team like the Lakers with what has been ailing them? Because I think it's a fascinating question.
I mean, okay. First, I want to read a quote from DeAndre Jordan after the game where he said he's referring to this incident between LeBron and Isaiah Stewart that ended up with LeBron getting ejected. And like you said, Stewart going absolutely nuts. This was one of those rare times with an on-court skirmish that was not a fake fight. Like Isaiah Stewart legitimately.
Oh, no, they separated these guys and whatever, and they couldn't calm him down. And at one point, Isaiah Stewart separated himself from his own, the Detroit guys and the, security guards and the police. I mean, he ran over. I mean, he was,
yes,
Bo Jackson Tecmo Bowl running over people in his own organization to try to get to the other side of the floor to get back at LeBron. I mean, he was mad.
So DeAndre said it could have made us unravel or could have brought us together, and I think it did just that. It brought us together. We were down. We could have easily folded, let go of the rope, but we didn't. And on one hand, I can appreciate that sentiment. I sincerely appreciate them fighting, rallying back. And Brian, if this is some sports movie, this would be maybe the rallying point for a montage section with a bunch of wins that get strung together. And, maybe that does happen. Stranger things have happened, and this season has been weird as hell, dating all the way back to the offseason and acquiring Russell Westbrook.
That was weird.
But here's the thing, though, that I think has to be acknowledged. And you hope that this quote from DeAndre and anybody else that expressed this sentiment isn't a little bit of telling on yourself. If you were actually in danger of folding against the effing 4-12 Pistons, everybody on this team should just quit basketball. Start your production companies or enhance the ones you already have. Melo can become a full-time vintner. LeBron can enhance his tequila empire. Are you really painting yourself as battling against all odds against that team? So it's what is it? What does it say about you as a team if you are even willing to present the Pistons as representing that type of character shift?
Even Andy, remove the Pistons from it at all, and I think it's a great point because the other I have another part of this that we can get to after the break. Remove the Pistons from it. Let's say it's the Bucks. I mean, the Bucks clearly go back to that game. One of the things that we praised about the Lakers was that when they got down by 12, they kept playing. They kept fighting. They kept that's what you're supposed to do. It's look, every team has a game like Minnesota or Boston or whatever, where these games just get away. Problem with the Lakers is they've had too many of them.
They've had too many games, and this is again where I wonder about the telling on yourself factor. They've had games where, quite frankly, the effort hasn't been there. That has been a recurring thing for this team, where I think the effort or the focus that is requisite to not just compete at the elite level that they want to be at, to compete at the level they're currently at, where they are not elite, where they're nowhere close to elite. And
Right.
you really truly have to be scrapping if you're going to get yourself through
Well,
the
what it
season and
is
eventually build to the point you want to
it's
be
the
at.
mentality of a team. Remember the Clippers a couple years ago? I know Lakers fans don't like to hear Clippers comparisons, but the Clippers in the last season before they got Kawhi
Why?
and Paul George, like they were a way above water, some way better than the parts, kind of scrappy ass team that nobody liked to play, that won way more games than any right to based on the team, the personnel that they had on the floor. That's how you play when you know it's the only way you can win. And this Lakers team isn't designed based on their superstar composition to think of themselves in that way. So I think that's part of why they've had trouble adopting the, like they believe, because of how they're put together, like all superstar teams, that you can measure these things, and they're wrong because they're not that good. But that gets to my feeling about this idea of being a galvanizing point, and we'll talk about that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Prize Picks. Hey, NBA fanatics, have you heard about Prize Picks? Daily fantasy made easy. More NBA props than any other DFS prop operator, offers all superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game. Everyone that deposits and uses the promo code NBA will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. That's a great deal. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, any players, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you and the projected numbers. You can also do mixed sport entries. Like you could pick the over on LeBron, whatever, and then combine that with the under on Lamar Jackson, whatever. Just, mix it up, make it fun, go crazy. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store, Google Play. PrizePicks is safe. They offer fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com. Use the promo code NBA. Go to the App Store. Again, PrizePicks. Daily fantasy made easy.
Hey, does this sound familiar to you? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, and another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone. You've got your neighbor's best friend's login for all the good stuff. I and Andy want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle. And it's a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like nothing you've ever had before, so you can watch all your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. You don't have to do it all in different places. That means no more juggling remotes, no more need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more about it at directtv.com. It's directtv.com. A compatible device is required, and content varies by package. I can understand why these guys would say sort of emotionally this is a potentially galvanizing place. LeBron was not playing well at all. This was not a good LeBron game to that point. He had 10 points. He had 5 assists. He was a minus 16 at that point when he got...
He did, however, as our friend Bill Oram, who covers the Lakers for The Athletic, astutely noted right after LeBron was ejected, very low on the list of things that matter amid an ugly situation that could have gotten much worse is the fact that LeBron exits with 10 points.
10 points.
The streak
is
lives.
alive.
The streak of double-digit scoring tallies. I have to imagine LeBron, one of the smartest players in NBA history, took a quick peek up at the scoreboard, saw where things were. Then he let loose
throw
with the elbow.
bow. Do you think you think that was inadvertent? Correct.
Yes. Okay. This is what I ultimately think it was. I don't think it was a dirty play, and I don't think it was intentional, in terms of the contact. I do think LeBron was somewhere between carelessly and recklessly swinging that elbow.
Yeah, he deserved to be thrown
just
out
clear
of the game.
some
If you
space.
elbow a guy in the head like that, that's a flagrant 2. You should be thrown out of the game.
No, he absolutely should have been ejected. But we've seen a lot of dirty elbows over the years, and sometimes superstars will throw dirty elbows like that. Like Dwayne Wade was not above an elbow. Like Kobe was not above an elbow like that. It's not really what LeBron does. So, and his immediate reaction was like, "Oh shit!" And he went over to actually help up Isaiah Stewart. So no,
I would agree. I would agree.
I think
it was reckless. I think it was careless, and I think he deserved to be thrown out of the game for it. But I don't think he was trying to injure Isaiah Stewart, as opposed to Isaiah Stewart, who was later trying to injure LeBron. I just wanted to ask, because it is a talking point after the game. That was my impression too. I I don't blame Stewart for his initial response, but I mean, at some point, it's like, dude, calm down.
The game stopped for like 20 minutes. Not an exaggeration. Like
No, it
20
was. It really
minutes.
was. Like, I almost ran out of I had to watch the game later. I almost ran out of my DVR space because of the extra time. I even set it to record an extra 40 minutes, and I almost missed it. But I just wanted to ask. But to get back to the point of whether or not this was sort of a potentially galvanizing moment for the Lakers. Yeah, I mean, I think mentally, I think they were I think it kind of woke them up in the sense of like, dudes, like, not only is it, like, this is a game that was kind of back page Sunday afternoon. It's an NFL weekend, whatever, not on national TV. Yeah, people would notice that we lost to the Pistons. Suddenly this game like becomes like a major story. Like, we are going to embarrass the bleep out of ourselves if we lose this game. It is embarrassing. And I think it woke him up a little bit. But the problem with thinking of it in that way is it implies that what's been wrong with the Lakers is the kind of thing that can be fixed by, coming together. Like, the problems that they have are structural. They can't play defense because they cannot stop anybody at the point of attack. Anybody. They got throttled in Boston at the point of, like, if you are a superstar and or a point guard and or just the number one guy on any team, you are salivating at the prospect of playing the Lakers. Like, all these guys.
Honestly, if you're a backup point guard or shooting guard, you should be reasonably stoked about playing this team.
I mean, like, they cannot stop anyone at the point of attack. And, their pick and roll coverages on Sunday were god awful.
Yes, they were.
I mean, they were terrible against the Pistons. They were terrible against Boston. And look, I mean, Frank Vogel, we'll get to this in a second. Like, had they lost this game, the volume on the Vogel may not make it through the end of the road trip chatter goes up by a lot. I don't think this does a whole lot to make people feel better. But, coming back and winning helps. But, particularly defensively, I don't think he wanted to. Like, they went back to DeAndre Jordan in the starting lineup, in part as the explanation was because they want THT. They want THT to be a little more active with LeBron in the game, and feel like he is more usable, has a higher usage with the second group than with the first. But I think also, too, they're grasping for straws again to try to figure out how to fix themselves defensively. It did not work because DeAndre Jordan is not going to solve that problem. But it would be a mistake. I'm going to let you get back in, but like, it would be a mistake to interpret the problems that they have as the kind of thing that could be fixed by the unity that comes after a gigantic brawl in Detroit.
Well, I agree with you to a point, but we've debated this a lot, Brian. I think effort and focus is a big problem with this team.
I would agree.
It's not the only problem, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily the biggest problem with this team, but we've seen at times, including the fourth quarter against Detroit, how much more focused and energetic and dialed in they can be as a team. We saw it during the Miami win. We saw it even in the loss to Milwaukee. And I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that they can effort and focus and bust ass their way to a championship. Like, they suddenly become elite through elbow grease. Like that, like there's a baseline
grit and gumption and hard hat wearing.
Right. No, there is a baseline for talent and cohesion and a roster that makes sense. And this team may ultimately not meet that baseline. We will see. But I do think that if they more regularly put in that focus and put in that effort and played more with the attitude of being an underdog, or frankly, just a team that isn't very good right now. But sometimes I wonder, I tweeted out during the game at Cam Brothers at some point during the first half that this team starting to look like a group that is hyper aware that the pieces don't fit, and they're losing confidence in their ability to overcome that. And
I think
when
that's
that
fair. I think
when
that's a fair way of putting it. That's kind of my point, is like they have
but here's the thing
structural
though.
problems.
Right, but here's the thing though. Those structural problems may ultimately be unfixable. And you and I were both fairly bullish about this team heading into the season, but we were even acknowledging then it's kind of a weird roster. We would not have made the Westbrook trade, even though we can recognize the theoretical upside involved with it. And we both have been saying for a couple of years, they've got to bring in more offensive pieces. Like scoring has been too much of a thing for this team. They may have gone in too extreme a direction.
I did not anticipate that. I just figured with you still have AD, you still have LeBron. I just didn't think look, injuries have made this very difficult, and there's no question. But I just didn't think I didn't think they would be this much worse. Like I just thought, I'm not sure if Westbrook made them better, but I did not think what they did over the offseason would make them this sort of substantively worse, at least where they are. What is it now? 16, 17, 18, 19? What are they? 18 games 18 games into the season. Like I missed that.
No. I mean, there are things like, for example, and this is something I've been harping on a lot. They are so bad on the defensive glass. Like that is a big part of their defensive struggles. And there's a lot of reasons that it's happening, like in terms of guard penetration that scrambles the defense, gets guys out of position, oftentimes working more small than they like. These are issues that, frankly, I did not anticipate. I thought
they'd be a better rebounding team.
So
I thought they'd be certainly adequate on that side.
But there are structural issues with this team. But if you're looking at things, and this gets back to the original question of, how much, if Detroit galvanizes them, how much does galvanizing matter in a tangible way? If it convinces them to start playing harder and more focused and with more of a sense of desperation,
I think
game in, game out, it doesn't solve everything, but it can help them. And this team needs every bit of help they can get.
Sure. I think
they have to help themselves.
I think what you're looking for is humility. There's an element of humility that this team hasn't found yet. That really what you're talking about is play with much more humility than they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's you said something that we had and I know we teased at the beginning of the show talking about Luke Walton and Frank Vogel. And if we don't get to it today, we'll get to it probably for Tuesday's show. But this leads to a conversation we were having during the day as we were kind of deciding things to talk about and texting back and forth that I think is interesting, because Anthony Davis took over the game in the fourth quarter. Russell, especially late. Russell Westbrook played very well in the fourth. So it's an interesting time to bring up exactly what is going to be needed of the LeBron, AD, and Westbrook combination, and which one of these guys really ultimately needs to elevate the most, because what we saw in the fourth quarter kind of gave some clues to that. We'll talk about it next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar. I love Thanksgiving. It's coming up this Thursday. You get all of the great food, all of the encouragement to eat every single scrap that you can possibly get down your gullet, but you've got to offset that decadence with some degree of common sense that is not just smothered in calories and sugar, and that's where Built Bars enter the equation. The new holiday dessert, for example, slice of pie, usually 300 calories, and that's without any whipped cream, ice cream, any of the stuff that
let's be honest, it's a dainty slice of pie.
Yeah, absolutely. But Built Bars,
man-sized slice of pie.
Only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar. They're low calorie, they're low carb, they're low fat, they're high protein, they're covered in 100% chocolate. I don't know how they managed to make all the low stuff happen with all that chocolate, but the Built Bar people, they're geniuses. And this stuff, it tastes great when you're hungry. If Thanksgiving isn't coming quick enough, go for a Built Bar or two. And there's nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday. Mark your calendar. Black Friday is going to be a huge event. All sorts of surprises. I am genuinely intrigued about what this event's going to be. We have not been told. So go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15. You get 15% off your first order. Again, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at Built.com.
So you had an interesting point to make about Anthony Davis, that I think it's a good day to talk about it, because LeBron was not in the game. AD obviously was, and he finished with 30 points, 10 rebounds. Again, blocked, Cade Cunningham twice on a single play in the last minute. Cade Cunningham looks nice, by the way. He's a good young player.
Yeah.
and all kinds of
Did a
different.
decent job holding back Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah, he tried.
That's leadership, baby.
And Westbrook finishes with 26, a rebound away from a what we would call a good triple double. It's hard to argue with. It it was one of the few times where they've looked like a legit good team, where you say, oh, these non-LeBron minutes that have been such a huge concern.
True non-LeBron minutes.
Like, right. I mean, but like they had a bunch of them while Westbrook, while LeBron's been out. Like where the team looked like it could respond in these non-LeBron minutes. Not Westbrook, because Westbrook has looked better without LeBron than with, which makes sense. But that the team could thrive in that way. How do you evaluate this? Because ultimately, what a lot of people say is that the Davis-LeBron combo playing at its peak is so good that it kind of papers over a lot of stuff, and we've seen the evidence of that potentially. And my position that we talked about last week is, does Westbrook enhance that, or does he detract from it? And we still don't know, because obviously this didn't happen without LeBron, but it did kind of open a window into how good AD needs to be for all of this to work.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we were texting back and forth, I was saying, like, heading into this season, the addition of Russell Westbrook was framed with the idea of him being able to keep those LeBron-less minutes that have been really hurting the Lakers over the last few seasons, and often hurt LeBron teams, because the gap between LeBron playing and LeBron not playing is so huge, no matter who's out there. And then, like, there's the idea of, especially when LeBron was out and the team was scuffling, LeBron coming back.
As opposed to when he's back in the team scuffle. They haven't looked any better with him in the lineup.
Exactly. I mean, I'm talking narratives. I'm not necessarily.
No, I understand. But I'm just a side note. No, LeBron's return has not helped. We asked that question. It's like one of our headlines in one pod. Would LeBron's return fix it? No, it has not.
But again, in terms of the general school of thought with this trio and the different roles that everybody plays, and I've started to think about really the way to look at this, and I think a lot of people, myself included, didn't reach the right conclusion, which is really, it is about Anthony Davis. And the guy that ultimately I think can raise the level of this team the most, and I think kind of has to be the guy to raise it the most, is actually Anthony Davis. Because he's the guy with theoretically another level to reach. Like, you cannot reasonably ask LeBron to reach another level, A, in terms of what LeBron's level is, because it's already incredibly high. B, where he's at right now physically, all the mileage.
Right. You can only expect him to reach the same, continue to reach. Like, can he do it one more time? Can he do it one more time? Can he do it one more time?
Right. And the same type of question with Russell Westbrook, because he is, still at his best a really damn good player, but he's definitely on the decline in terms of just the course of his career. Anthony Davis is the guy of the three of them that has that potential next level to reach. And I think he is the one that is most realistic when you think about this team taking the next level. Like, it maybe isn't realistic in the terms of AD actually reaching it, but I actually think it's most realistic.
And by the way, what you're asking me to do, because I mean, this year, people complain about him. I've seen a bunch of these very early quarter poll, MVP candidates. He's not listed in the top 2 or 3 of those, in part because the Lakers have been so bad relative to expectations. But he's always on that next 3 or 4 guys. So he's playing at if not an MVP level, a near MVP level. And right, no, I'm just saying, it's like, it's not like you're asking, we're talking about a guy who's needs to jump from the 25th best player to we got to get him into you're talking about a guy who's already playing at a very high level, needing to ratchet it up even higher to be one of the 2 or 3 best players at, to be like Giannis, to be Jokic, like that kind of impact.
I want to make it clear. I'm not being critical of AD's play this season. I agree with you. I think AD's been really good. I'm just talking about what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And LeBron is often thought of as the guy that papers over everything because he's done that for his whole career. I mean, LeBron has been the guy that can fix, Zach Lowe refers to him all the time as the NBA's ultimate problem solver. And I think that's a really good way to think about him. But when again, you think about where LeBron is right now in his career and some of the issues you're dealing with in terms of just keeping him on the court, and also too, some of the issues on this team specifically that need to be papered over, AD is actually the better guy to be looking for that. He's a more realistic guy. He's also, I think, the more capable guy.
It's as if the puzzle this year is, can LeBron be the problem solver in the way that unlocks AD to be that good? Well, that's might be the solution to the problem.
Maybe, or AD unlocking himself.
Either way, but like both.
Solve the puzzle yourself. And for example, I was looking, and this may change after tonight's game. I have no idea. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But heading into this game, I was looking at fourth quarter points for this team. And AD among rotation guys, that somehow Sekou Doumbouya reached fourth in what is only to be described as small size blowout theater.
And by the way, he was released heading into the weekend.
That's true, but he's still,
I believe Chandy Brown now has that two-way deal.
AD is fourth on this team in fourth quarter points per game. He's behind LeBron, then THT, then Westbrook, then comes him, then Carmelo.
Yeah, that
rounds out the top five.
That should
he needs to be higher there. Like, he needs to be more of a force in the fourth quarter. He needs to shoot a higher percentage in the fourth quarter heading into this game. Again, I don't know how Detroit affected it all, but he was only shooting 44% from the field in fourth quarters. Like, he needs to be better than that. Like, he needs to be really the guy on this team. And the idea right now, I think, to most appropriately think about the Lakers is, can you win a championship if Anthony Davis is your best player? Like, LeBron may still be the most important in terms of all the different things he can do. Russ may be the X factor, the wild card, however you want to put it. All three need to be really good. Frankly, everybody needs to be really good. But Anthony Davis, I think, needs to be your clear-cut best player, elevating guys on both sides of the ball. Otherwise, I'm starting to think they're not going to be championship caliber.
There is so much in that conversation to talk about, and we can't do it tonight. Can't do it for Monday's show, but let's carry this into Tuesday and probably into Wednesday and Thursday and I don't know, December.
Definitely want to get into firing season, though.
We do, and we can do a lot of things, but like there's a lot of stuff that you bring up in this conversation about the way the team is constructed and what it means if LeBron, AD has to elevate, if LeBron has to also elevate, and whatever that are sort of corollaries of that conversation. Because what you put out there, it's people can sit on that for 24 hours, I think, and think about it.
That's what we do here.
That's right. Food for thought, Andy, is what you've given people in this holiday season. Once again, thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers.
Although it's most important that it is Built Bars.
Right. I was about to say, make it a Built Bar. Want to thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. Make another Locked On podcast, Locked On Bets, Locked On Fantasy your second listen if you can, but only, again, after making us your first listen. That is the most important part of this sales pitch. Anyway, Locked On Lakers on YouTube as well. Subscribe to that. Cracked 4,000 viewers, on to 5,000.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for helping us do that. We'll see everybody Tuesday.